50 Years in the Church of Rome, Chapter 26. The hour of my absence had been one of anxiety for the curate and the vicars, but my prompt return filled them with joy. "What's the news?" they all exclaimed. "Good news," I answered. "The battle has been fierce but short. We have gained the day, and if we are only true to ourselves, another great victory is in store for us. The bishop is so sure that we are the only ones who can think of that reform that he will not move a finger to prevent the other priests from following us. This security will make our success infallible. We must not lose a moment. Let us address our circular to every priest in Canada." In 1 hour there were more than 20 writers at work, and before 24 hours more than 300 letters were carried to all the priests, giving them the reasons why we should try, by all fair means, to put an end to the shameful demoniacal trade in masses which was going on between Canada and France. The week was scarcely ended when letters came from almost all the curates and vicars to the bishop, respectfully requesting him to withdraw his name from the Society of Three Masses. Only 50 refused to comply with our request. Our victory was more complete than we had expected, but the Bishop of Quebec, hoping to regain his lost ground, immediately wrote letters to the Bishop of Montreal, my Lord Telemessi, to come to his help and show us the enormity of the crime we had committed in rebelling against the will of our ecclesiastical superiors. A few days later, to my great dismay, I received a short but very cold note from the bishop's secretary, telling me that their lordships, the bishops of Montreal and Quebec, wanted to see me at the palace without delay. I had never seen the Bishop of Montreal, and my surprise and disappointment were great in finding myself in the presence of a man, my idea of whom was of gigantic proportions, when in reality he was very small. But I felt exceedingly well pleased with the admirable mixture of firmness, intelligence, and honesty of his whole demeanor. His eyes were piercing as the eagle's, but when fixed on me, I saw in them the marks of a noble and honest heart. The motions of his head were rapid, his sentences short, and he seemed to know only one line, the straight one. When approaching a subject or dealing with a man, he had the merited reputation of being one of the most learned and eloquent men of Canada. The Bishop of Quebec had remained on his sofa, and left the Bishop of Montreal to receive me. I fell at his feet and asked his blessings, which he gave me in the most cordial way. Then, putting his hand on my shoulder, he said, in a Quaker style, "Is it possible that thou art Jinque, that young priest who makes so much noise? How can a young and a small man make so much noise?" There being a smile on his countenance as he uttered these words, I saw at once there was no anger or bad feeling in his heart. I replied, "My lord, do you not know that the most precious pearls and perfumes are put in the smallest vases?" The bishop saw that this was a compliment to his address. He smilingly replied, "Well, well, if thou art a noisy priest, thou art not a fool. But tell me, why dost thou want to destroy our Three Masses society, and establish that new one on its ruin, in spite of thy superiors?" My lord, my answer will be as respectful, short, and plain as possible. I have left the Three Masses society because it was my right to do it, without anybody's permission. I hope our venerable Canadian bishops do not wish to be served by slaves." "I do not say," replied the bishop, "that you were bound in conscience to remain in the Three Masses Society. But can I know why thou hast left such a respectable association, at the head of which thou seest thy bishops and the most venerable priest in Canada?" "I will again be plain in my answer, my lord. If your lordship wants to go to hell with your venerable priest by spiriting away 20 cents from every one of our honest and pious penitents for masses which you get said for 5 by bad priest in Paris, I will not follow you. Moreover, if your lordship wants to be thrown into the river by the furious people, when they know how long and how cunningly we have cheated them with our simoniacal trade in masses, I do not want to follow you into the cold stream." "Well, well," answered the bishop, "let us drop the matter forever." He uttered this short sentence with such an evidence of sincerity and honesty that I saw that he really meant it. He had at a glance seen that his ground was untenable. In the presence of priests who knew their rights and had a mind to stand by them. My joy was great indeed at such a prompt and complete victory. I fell at the bishop's feet and asked his benediction before taking leave of him. I then left to go and tell the curates and vicars the happy issue of our interview from the bishops of Montreal. From that time till now, at the death of every priest, the clerical press never failed mentioning whether the deceased priest belonged to the Three or One Mass Society. We had, to some extent, diminished the simoniacal and infamous trade in masses, but unfortunately we had not destroyed it. I know that today it has revived. Since I left the Church of Rome, the bishops of Quebec have raised the Three Masses Society from its grave. It is a public fact that no priest will dare deny that the trade in masses is still conducted on a large scale with France. There are in Paris and other large cities in that country public agencies to carry on that shameful traffic. Prospectuses. Rue de la Reims, Paris, N. Levesque, editor of the works of Mr. Dudefrici, designatus curate of Notre Dame des Victorias, delivered to the Reverend Mr. Carmel, curate of Ansieux, Paris, October 12, 1874. 10 metres of satin cloth at 22 francs. 8 inches of merino all wool. 123. Month of May. 2. History of Mary Christina. 1.4 francs. Life of Saint Stanislas Kostka. 2. Meditations of the Soul. 4. Jesus Christ, the Light of the World. 2. Packing and Freight. 9 francs. total 363 francs. Mr. Curate, we have the honor of informing you that the packages containing the articles you have ordered on the 4th of October were shipped on the 12th of October to Ding. We respectfully request that you go and ask for them. For the payment of these articles, we request that you say the following masses: 58 ad antenium of the giver for the discharge of Reverend Mr. Monet, 58 ad antenium of the givers for the discharging of Reverend Mr. Hoeg, 100 and also 188 for the dead for the discharge of Reverend Wood. Mr. Curate, would you be kind enough to say or have these said all those masses in the shortest time possible, and answer these reverend gentlemen if they make any inquiries about the acquittal of those masses? Respectfully yours, signed, Antoine Levesque, Paris, 11th, 1874. Reverend Mr. Carmel, we have the honor of addressing you the invoice of what we forwarded to you on the 12th of October on account. We have put to your credit 188 masses. We respectfully request that you get said the following intentions: 73 for the dead to the acquittal of Mr. Reverend Walters, 70 pro defuncto for the discharge of 20 ad intendum donatis Reverend C, 13 ad intentionis donas 176. Mr. Curate, be kind enough to say these masses, or have them said as soon as possible, and answer the reverend gentlemen who may inquire from you about their acquittal. The 188 masses mentioned in our letter of the 3rd instance, added to the 176 here, make 364 francs, the value of the goods you sent you. We thought you would like to have the pamphlets of propaganda we addressed to you. Respectfully yours, signed Antoine Levesque. Hence it is that the priests in France and elsewhere have gold watches, rich house furniture, and interesting books purchased with the money paid by our poor, deluded Canadian Catholics to their priests for masses which are turned into mercantile commodities in other places. It would be difficult to say who makes the best bargain between those merchants of masses, the priests to whom they are sold, or those from whom they are bought at a discount of 25 or 30%. The only evident thing is the cruel deception practiced on the credulity and ignorance of the Roman Catholics by their priests and bishops. Today, the houses of Mr. Anthony Levesque in Paris are the most accredited in France. In 1874, the house of Mesme was doing an immense business with its stock of masses. But in an evil day, the government suspected that the number of masses paid into their hands exceeded the number of those celebrated through their hired priests. The suspicion soon turned into certainty when the books were examined. It was then found that an incredible number of masses which were to empty the large room of purgatory never reached their destination, but only filled the purse of the partisan mass merchant. And so the unlucky Mesme was unceremoniously sent to the penitentiary to meditate on the infinite merits of the holy sacrifice of the Mass, which had been engulfed in his treasures. But these facts were not known by the poor Roman Catholics of Canada, who are fleeced more and more by their priests under the pretext of saving souls from purgatory. A new element of success in the large swindling operations of the Canadian priests has lately been discovered. It is well known that in the greater part of the United States, the poor, deluded Irish pay $1 to their priest instead of a shilling for a low mass. Those priests whose consciences are sufficiently elastic, as is often the case, keep the money without ever thinking of having the masses said, and soon get rich. But there are some whose natural honesty shrinks from the idea of stealing, but unable to celebrate all the masses paid for and requested at their hands, they send the dollars to some of their clerical friends in Canada who, of course, prefer these $1 masses to the 25-cent ones paid by the French Canadians. However, they keep that secret and continue to fill their treasury. There are, however, many priests in Canada who think it less evil to keep those large sums of money in their own hands than to give them to the bishops to traffic with the merchants of Paris. At the end of one of the ecclesiastical retreats in the seminary of Saint Sulpice in 1850, Bishop Bourget told us that one of the priests who had lately died had requested him, in the name of Jesus Christ, to ask every priest to take a share in the $4,000 which he had received for masses he never said. We refused to grant him that favor, and those $4,000 received by that priest, like the millions put into the hands of other priests and the bishops, turned to be nothing less than an infamous swindling operation under the mask of religion. To understand what the priests of Rome are, let the readers note what is said in the Roman Catholic Bible of the priests of Babylon. And King Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom, and Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. Now the Babylonians had an idol called Bel, and there were spent upon him every day 12 measures of fine flour, 40 sheep, 6 vessels of wine. And the king worshipped it, and went daily to adore. But Daniel worshipped his own God. And the king said unto him, Why dost thou not worship Bel? Who answered and said, Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who created the heavens and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh. Then the king said, Thou thinkest not that Bel is a living God? See how much he yet eateth and drinketh every day. Then Daniel said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay, and within and brass without, and did never eat or drink anything. So the king was wroth, and called for his priests, and said, If you tell me not who this is that devoureth these expenses, you shall surely die. But if ye spoken certify me that Bel devoureth them, then Daniel shall die, for he has spoken blasphemy against Bel. Daniel said unto the king, Let it be according to thy word. Now the priests of Bel there were 70, besides their wives and children. And the king went with Daniel to the temple of Bel. So Bel's priests said, Lo, we go out, but thou, O king, set on the meat, and make ready the wine, and shut the door fast, and seal it with thine own signet, to morrow when thou comest in. If thou findest not that Bel has eaten all, we will suffer death, or else Daniel that speaketh falsely against Bel shall die, and they little regard, for under the table they had made a privy entrance, whereby they entered continually and consumed these things. So when they were gone forth, the king set meats before Bel. Now Daniel had command of his servants to bring ashes, and those they strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Then went they out, shut the door, sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. Now in the night came the priests with their wives and children, as they were wont to do, and did eat and drink it all. In the morning betimes the king arose, and Daniel with him. The king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, Yea, O king, they be whole. As soon as they had opened the door, the king looked upon the table and cried with a loud voice, Great art thou, O Bel, and with thee there is no deceit at all. Then laughed Daniel, and held the king that he should not go in, and said, Behold, now the pavement and the mark, well, whose footsteps are these? And the king said, I see the footprints of men, women, and children. And the king was angry, and took the priests with their wives and children, who showed him the privy doors, where they came in and consumed such things as were on the table. Therefore the king slew them, and delivered Bel into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple. Who does not pity the king of Babylon? When looking at his clay and brass, God exclaimed, Great art thou, O Bel, and with thee there is no deceit. But is the deception practiced by the priests of the Pope on their poor, deluded dupes less cruel and infamous? Where is the difference between the Babylonian god made with brass and baked clay, and the god of the Roman Catholics made with a handful of wheat and flour, baked between two hot, polished irons? How skillful were the priests in keeping the secret of what became of the rich daily offerings brought to the hungry God. Who could suspect that there was a secret trap through which they came with their wives and children to eat the rich offerings? So today, among the simple and blind Roman Catholics, who could suppose that the immense sums of money given every day to the priest to glorify God, purify the souls of men, and bring all kinds of blessings upon the donors, were, on the contrary, turned into the most ignominious and swindling operation the world has ever seen. Though the brass god of Babylon was a contemptible idol, is not the wafer god of Rome still more so? Though the priests of Bel were skillful deceivers, are they not surpassed in the art of deception by the priests of Rome? Do not these carry on their operations on a much larger scale than the former? But as there is always a day of retribution for the great iniquities of this world, when all things will be revealed, and just as the cunning of the priest of Babylon could not save them, when God sent his prophet to take away the mask behind which they deceived their people, so let the priest of Rome know that God will, sooner or later, send his prophet who will tear off the mask behind which they deceive the world. Their big, awkward, and flat feet will be seen and exposed, and the very people whom they keep prostrated before their idols, crying, "O God, with thee there is no deceit at all of all," will become instruments of the justice of God in the great day of retribution. The end of chapter 26, 50 years in the Church of Rome.